Welcome back to Collaboration Conversations. I'm your co-host, Regina Partain-Bergman. Anybody who watches the show, you know that my co-host, Pearl Cox, is unable to be with us right now. And so I have the enormous pleasure of having guest co-hosts. And as if you've watched the show at all, you've heard me say, we're going to continue this when Pearl comes back because it's just too much fun and I get to meet so many great people. Today is no different. I have a marvelous guest co-host today. And I am his name is Cashflow Mike. This is Mike Milan. And Mike, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Will you tell folks a little bit about your journey, what's brought you to this place in life, who you serve and why?
Yeah, interesting, right? Live from San Antonio, it's Cashflow Mike. So Mike Milan. and by the way, I mean, when I introduce the other ones, I've got some great things to say about the rest of the crew.
Cool. I love that.
But when you talk about like, how do you get here? What's your journey? I've probably got the messiest resume in the room. I usually tell people you can't get here from there. It's one of those things. But it all started out with my family outgrowing my income. That's basically what happened, right? Had my third child and decided a state trooper salary wasn't cutting it anymore. So started a company, then started another company, then 14 companies later, here I am. And what I do now is I help accountants, bookkeepers, and their clients find hidden cash in their business through a couple of different programs that I have available to, those audiences. So I appreciate you having me, Regina. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here, Mike. And it's been a while us getting to this point. We've kind of had a little bit of a journey getting here, but we made it, and you brought some amazing guests with you today. Would you please introduce our panelists and have them share a bit about themselves, their journey, and who they serve and why?
Great. Well, I'm going to start with the prettiest and my favorite.
Hi.
I was going to say Blaine, but I'll start with Mariette. but Mariette Martinez, she is a longtime friend. We have collaborated and connected and worked together on different projects for several years. And I'm pleased that she said yes to join us. Mariette, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you, Regina, for having us here, and Mike Milan for being brave enough to have us in the same room. So I don't know how this is gonna go, because when you just get Mike and I in one room, that's one thing, but Mike, myself, and Seth and the rest of us, we may blow up the internet today. So a little bit about myself is I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandmother my mother owned a chain of restaurants for 30 years. I started doing her bookkeeping at a very young age. I've been told not to say the age anymore because it doesn't even sound real, but it was close to 11 and 12 years old. And then I actually opened my own accounting practice. Fast forward 2 decades, and I have a huge passion to help the accounting bookkeeping community to help small businesses thrive, not only because I lived it through my own experiences, but because it's important for us to just take a completely different shift in regards to how to empower small businesses. So I became a full-time educator, educating my community on collaboration, on real-time conversations, so that way we all can join financial conversations so businesses can continue to grow, thrive, and succeed. And I do that through my learning platform, MasterYour Books, and through collaborations and partnerships that I have with amazing humans, including Seth and Cashflow Mike, even though his name is Mike Milan, and many other amazing humans in our industry. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Man, I love that. I love what you're doing. That is so fantastic. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Regina, I got to spill a little tea. Last time Mariette and Seth and I were in the same room like this, she dropped the F-bomb on us. So we got to watch.
I got it on video.
You got to throttle her, you got to throttle her.
All right. All right.
Mike, you dropped 3 of them yesterday on our podcast.
So I need to keep my finger on the mute button. Is that what you're all telling me?
Hopefully, okay. Television, you have a 7-second delay or something.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no. We are live, folks. This is what we get when we're live.
All right. So the next person I want to introduce is none other than, Seth David, right? And I got to tell a story about Seth, right? When I first met Seth, it was at QuickBooks Connect in San Jose. and he had the best marketing I'd ever seen in my life. He just wore a T-shirt that says, "I'm Seth David," right? And his partner at the time says, "Not Seth David." So to me, I'm like going, it caused everybody, I'm talking 4,000 people or however many's at this thing, to come up to Seth David and go, "Who is Seth David? And why should I
Well,
know?"
for context, though, we had a whole bunch of people wearing shirts that said "Not Seth David," right? So that's what generated the curiosity. Like, who the hell is Seth David?
Yeah. And right now he has the guide to the universe. It is called the Nerds Guide to the
Guide to
Galaxy.
the Galaxy.
Right? Guides to the Galaxy. So, Seth, how are you, buddy?
I'm not quite arrogant enough to have the guide to the universe, but the galaxy is within the realm of what's within my reach, I think. So anyway, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Mike. I was honored, of course, that you invited me, and very excited to learn, whose company we were going to be in today. So I'm excited about that. Very quickly about me, I started out making videos for totally selfish reasons. I was tired of answering the same questions over and over again. And I thought, if I had a link to a video that answered the question rather than rewriting the same email explanations over and over again, it will save me time, right? Like I now like to say, fast forward today, this was optimized for retrieval. Right. I didn't think of it that way in those days. I didn't term it that way. I do now. But the idea was, rather than writing out the same email and sending it, and then I get asked the same question a few days later, and I'm like, where was that email? Let me copy and paste it. And when I caught myself doing that, I was like, no, let me just make a video, put it up on YouTube. It turns out that a lot of accountants and bookkeepers also liked my videos. I didn't think it was for them. I figured they already know this stuff, right? But it turns out a lot of them like the way I teach this stuff. And again, fast forward, 20 years later, I've got a community called 97 and Up, which is my sort of mastermind and mentoring group for accountants and bookkeepers, where I collaborate with them on a daily basis and work with them on whatever they need help with, whether it's their marketing and how to make up shirts that tell people who isn't you, to basic accounting questions and how to keep the books for various industries and so on and so forth. So,
man, I got to tell you, I mean, Seth and I used to have a podcast, by the way. It was called the Cash Flow Show with Mike.
That's right.
Right. So it was one of my favorite times. I mean, I think it fell apart because I could never stay in an office. He would catch me on a golf course. He would catch me in a bar.
That made it interesting, actually. I remember catching you in Vegas. You were outdoors. I forget which, maybe it was the Bellagio or whatever. That was fun.
That's right.
I also, by the way, I have a photo of when I was up in Washington before Mike moved to Texas. I have a photo. This is like good dirt if you ever need it. I have a photo of Mike sitting on my lap.
Hey, easy. That's a great photo, though. I'm really happy with myself in that photo. It was a happy time in my life.
You looked very happy.
Smile on my face. All right. Hey, and last is my podcast, my current podcast partner. I upgraded from Seth. And this is probably the first time that Blaine and I have been on a Zoom or a live stream together without beers in our hands. I mean, because our podcast, Mike and Blaine, is all about business, beer, and BS. And you're going to get a healthy dose of two of those three today, I'm sure.
Always. And we're going to have to, I'm going to have to settle down here because, Mike and I can get off on a tangent and talk straight for an hour before he looks at his watch and goes, we better call it. So.
Yeah. So Blaine, by the way, has a great piece of tech. It's a cash flow forecasting software. So, I mean, of course, that's how we connected. We actually used to be competitors. I mean, when it comes right down to it, I built a product called Cash Flow Tool. He has a product called Dryrun. Hey, tell us about Dryrun, Blaine.
Yeah, so a little bit of my background. Quick background: I had a creative agency for over a decade. I learned about cash flow in 2008, along with the rest of the world. And fast forward a few years after that, I realized this is a really big problem for business owners. So I started Dryrun, and that's what we do today. Is Dryrun's a cash flow forecasting software. But you can also forecast your sales. You can do scenario modeling. It's all about figuring out where you're going as a business. And actually, lately, we've had a lot of CPAs and CFOs, fractional controllers, all coming to us to use Dryrun to help their clients figure out where they're going as well. So that's what I do today, and also podcast with Mike and drink beer.
Hey, look at that. Did you see that? Regina called it right before we started. She goes, introductions take about 10 minutes. Look at the live counter up in the top corner. Dude, did she nail that or what?
Down to the second, yeah.
And we didn't even get to mention, Mike, like we did on our Guide to the Galaxy podcast, that you and I actually started out on opposite sides of the law.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah,
Now that's an interesting story, I'm sure.
Well, that's when Mariette coined also the thing cash flow violations, right? It was all a big play on Seth
That's
and I.
right.
Think about it. That was real life cops and robbers.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing that game for a while.
That's right.
Yeah, it really was.
You want to explain that?
Yeah, I love that. I know we're going to go into, whatever collaboration story we're going to move into next, but I think that that's such a beautiful segue of the fact that you even said, I think you said, Blaine and I, we used to be competitors, and now obviously you're collaborators. And I think that is truly the power of the word collaboration. I loved when I got invited to this podcast and I saw the title, Collaboration and Conversations. Like that's literally what we need to do to shift so many things in our business and shift so many things specifically in the accounting industry, because I feel like those are two lacking areas in our industry. They are, and they're at a detriment to who we really want to win, which is the business owner. And so, if you ever do hear that story on the Guide to the Galaxy, that's where we started that podcast, because the three of us were on it. And it was about the fact that you can be on complete opposites of a story or of a journey, but that doesn't mean that there's always going to be some way or some magic to kind of bring your stories together. And we did it through this funny way of talking about violations. And so I just wanted to, I love that you brought that up, Mike. I always want to say cash flow Mike, but you're Mike to me.
I still, by the way, Mike, I still expect to see you at the next conference handing out cash flow violation citations to people. And like you said, just for being at the conference, the presence at the conference and the expense itself is a cash flow violation. Right?
Just buying the booth, right? Just buying the booth, right? You'll never get that money back.
Wow. I love that. Cash flow violation.
Yeah. What's interesting, awesome. Mariette? Oh, sorry, Regina.
No, that's just awesome. And then can I just comment on Mariette's too, that I love that you brought out that we can be on opposite sides of things and still collaborate. Yes. We can be competitors at some point and still come together and collaborate. And so important, such an important concept. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, what was so interesting is that episode she's describing was just one of the most fun I think I've ever had on a podcast, right? It just was banter and back and forth the entire time. So if you've not seen the Guide to the Galaxy, look for that one. But that was also the birthplace of Mariette's recent collaboration, right? She took people from that podcast and another one as well, and brought them into her world, right? Which is her training course, her training environment. And she actually allowed me to come in and address her audience. And it was just a great way to enhance the value of her program by bringing in some different expert opinions. So explain how that happened.
And I did mine yesterday, by the way.
Oh, right on.
With her group.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that I agree. And I'd love to hear from everyone, but I think that's what it is. It's taking that one first kind of, sometimes it's uncomfortable step. You can call it a brave step, but just like get out of your comfort zone and really start to connect with people on a different level. When it comes to Mike and Seth, we're already friends. So we're brave enough to just get on a podcast and see what happened. And again, sorry, excuse me, I did drop an F-bomb, which I really thought would be removed. But of course, Seth now had to blow it up into a bomb on the podcast. So it's very obvious.
I had my graphic designer create a graphic especially for that.
Quite embarrassing since I don't use that language very often. But
I don't know. I've been hearing in other forums that you drop them quite regularly, actually.
That's not true. At least not the recorded ones. Not live. Not live. But yeah, what Mike said is so true. So after I did that session with him, I had a cohort, a learning experience coming up soon. And I already, to be honest, wanted to invite them in as guests, but I also wanted to get the feeling of what could come up from this experience. And soon after that, I actually asked them both if they would kindly come in and come into my community. And my community now, like they cannot, one of them called Seth Saint Seth.
That I did not know about.
Yeah, I was like, are you sure you want to give him that title?
Yeah, well, especially because I'm Jewish, so it's really bit of a conflict.
Yeah, and then the other ones, they were all accountants and bookkeepers, but they want all of their clients to like follow Mike. One of them her spouse has a business, and she's like, I'm literally talking to my husband about Mike, and the husband's like, why are you talking so much about this Mike guy?
Mike, you're in trouble. Some husbands are going to be looking for you.
They know where I live. You know what I did.
Mariette, I use a model very similar to that, where, I invite people to be a guest co-host here. They introduce me to people like yourself and Seth and Blaine. And then Mike and I go on and we do a master class together after this. That's the idea, is that we take that to a master class where we're both teaching. Ultimately, those master classes are going to go behind a membership site that we can all drive traffic to, share revenue, that kind of a thing, and just really help others. So yeah, it's a very similar process.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, love it.
So you're all invited, by the way. We're going to talk about that later, but you're all invited to host one of these shows as well, and to co-host a masterclass with me. So,
wow.
Yeah.
See, I just learned that. I didn't know. I thought I was doing this for
We hadn't gotten
free.
that far, Mike.
She just said, "Hey, you want to talk to your friends and hang out for a little bit?" I'm like, "Yeah, all the time." That's all I want to do.
That was it.
So, hey, speaking of friends, I mean, Blaine also has another podcast, and he does a lot of other different outreach. And I thought you were talking about a different collaboration you were doing part of with Dryrun and something else. I mean, I can't remember though.
Well, yeah, like we have our, of course, we have our own internal podcast where we interview established business owners, because that's kind of a lot of our market is more of established business owners. But recently we were invited to do a podcast with LumiQ, and I'll give them a plug because it's a great organization. It's all for CPAs, and we're going to be doing a podcast on there. I think we've actually done one in the past as well with them, and it's a great way for us to contribute and to help, with some thought leadership and teaching and education. And, but then people also find out about us, of course. So that's something that we're, always looking to do. And, and I find a lot of these things come up when you're just open to talking with people. And like Mike mentioned, at one time we're competitors, but kind of, I find in our space that there's a lot of tools, but they seem tailor-made for little different groups. And we still routinely get referrals from our competitors. And, we actually will do the same as well, because we know we're really good with businesses that tend to be like over $1 million, multi-million-dollar business, fairly sophisticated. There's other tools out there that are a little bit better suited, that are a little bit more straightforward for startups or a little bit smaller businesses. And there's ones that are for sort of much bigger, or they need more reporting. And we're just here to try and help. We're here to help the business owners. We're here to help our partners. And it works really well as an ecosystem when everyone just wants to help the end user, help the customer. And I've met with, other competitors at, in San Jose at these different events. I've met at some of our competitors, had great chats with them, sat down, had a drink with them, and we actually passed back and forth. And so I almost cringe with the word competitor, to be honest, right? Because we're all trying to solve the same problem, and we a lot of times feel like we're working together to lift the water level for everybody.
That's the way it should be.
I love that, actually. I think a lot of us, I have to say this, what I found is that in the accounting industry in particular, there's a lot more of an atmosphere of sort of welcoming that concept, right? That a lot of us understand very well that there's plenty to go around. So we don't, I've never worried about competition. I've had people say, well, what if somebody wants to do a video on the same subject you've done? I say, I'll help you. I'll help you do that video, right? Because you're going to have a little different flavor. You're going to have a little different approach to things, right? I played with Dryrun, loved the product. Ultimately, there were some things I was looking for that Dryrun didn't offer. This was years ago. That may have changed, right?
Well, come back and talk with me, Seth.
Yep. I used Giraffe for a while to be honest, ultimately, I went right back to Google Sheets because I felt that was where because I know how to rock a spreadsheet so well, that was where I had the most flexibility. If I could conceive it, I could create it. And if it broke, I could fix it. I didn't get stuck in a support loop. So, that's, and I even had clients who loved using Google Sheets because it was easy for them to get in with me and collaborate, right? That's what I love about Google Sheets versus, say, Excel. Much, much easier to collaborate on something like that. But be happy to take a look, Blaine, again at Dryrun, because I'll admit it's been a few years now.
Well, we just had I'm going to plug it a little bit. We had a brand new release in June, completely new software. We're building on basically Dryrun 2. So I'd love to actually just bounce it off you, just even get some feedback. All of you guys, come and talk with me. Anyone out there, come and talk with me. We just want some feedback and chat with you guys. So a little plug there.
But I love that. I love that atmosphere in the accounting industry in particular, where it's not, even though theoretically we're, especially when I was starting out and I still had an accounting practice, in theory, these other accountants, could be seen as competitors with me. And I never saw it that way. Now, other industries, like you go into marketing and it's brutal. It is, they will rip each other to shreds if they get the opportunity in that world. But in accounting, it's very, very collaborative. We have a very welcoming atmosphere. Everybody's really, that's what I love about the communities that we have. And you can see it. Go into the Facebook groups. And then ultimately I built 97 and Up around this very concept that I knew that as I grew this group of people, I would have people ranging in experience from brand new to many, many years in. And the ones with experience many years in reach out very generously and help others. I'm so proud when I see, and it happens pretty regularly, that somebody with experience will respond to somebody who's struggling with something, and they'll say, here's a Zoom link. Let's get on a Zoom. I'll show you. And they're not getting paid for that. They're just doing it just to be helpful.
Yeah. It's funny. We've always called it co-opetition. You guys heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard it from you.
Oh, you heard it?
Yeah, it's the only place I've heard it.
Yep.
Well, I don't
I
think
have heard it, but it's been a long time.
We need the cash flow Mike dictionary of terms here, right?
Hey,
I love your description of the cash flow statement as the tattletale, right?
Oh, it's my favorite. I use that all the time. I want to share something about the concept of competition and collaboration. And I think I'll speak to it more from the accounting industry, obviously, because that's where most of my experience is. And I think, especially now that I teach it, so I teach a lot of soft skills and business literacy when I'm helping my peers, build their businesses. And interesting enough, if they start learning marketing, right, or if they start, trying to boots on the ground, they want to sell something. So right away, and they take a quick short course. The first thing that I've realized they've learned is, okay, what is your competitive advantage? Who are your competitors? Do your research. So they're already in that kind of like, oh, I got to get out there and I got to be different. And I can't do it like him because, I got to stand out, which is great. But I feel like it's reversed, because it's more like there is enough for everybody out there. It's a big world. If you want to differentiate yourself and stand out, you really want to work on your brand and how your bringing is unique, and how there's only one Mariette and one Blaine and one Seth and one Mike and one Regina. And if you start with that first, if you start with your story and how you're going to change lives and impact lives, and then you move on to the competitor and obviously the market research and all that, it's not so much aggression towards that concept, but many times they do it reverse. And they miss the whole collaboration part. They miss the whole part about the fact that, like, why are you so fearful of Blaine or Seth or Mike or Regina? They're your friends. Like, if I get on a call with Regina and if she's called the profit doctor and I'm called the profit master, like, I'm excited. I'm going to be in the same room with her. Like, that's amazing. That doesn't threaten me. That excites me. And I think that's what's really missing, is that, like, you went too fast. You missed a huge piece in this journey. And we have to pull them back and help them not feel shameful about it, but also say, you missed such a massive piece of entrepreneurship. And that's why you're really going about it like in a way that doesn't serve you, and it doesn't even serve your clients either. And so I feel like that's what I've witnessed is the biggest issue between this concept of competitive and collaborative.
That's super interesting. What I like about that, when you're talking about unique selling proposition, all that, it kind of relates to what Blaine said. where he kind of found his place. There's like a little sales seam. Some people call it niche or niche, but you find your place in the world, and then you figure out how you can work with the people that are considered your competitors. But that sales seam is what makes you unique, successful, and provides you that expertise. Like Regina, what are you doing? I mean, tell us more about you.
So I am a profit acceleration and exit strategist, business coach, working with entrepreneurs and CEOs to help them identify who they are in the market more effectively. That is an element of it for sure, and stand out in that marketplace because they've identified that, how they're unique. That it really does, Mariette, to boil down to how is it that you are unique? What do you bring that nobody else can bring? If I look at your website, can anybody else just copy that website and it be the same for them? They just change the names, right? Mm-hmm. If it's really showcasing your uniqueness and what you bring to that market, it's going to attract your ideal clients, and it's not going to be something that somebody else can copy. And then I help them identify up to 40 different profit levers in their business that do not require spending additional money on marketing and advertising. And then we lay out a roadmap to achieve that profit and coach them through that. So they're able then to buy back their time, reduce their stress, create a business that can run without them, so that ultimately it has resale value when they're ready to exit the market. And of course, so many people in entrepreneurship say, oh, but I don't ever plan to sell the business. I'm just going to run it forever. Well, that's wonderful. But what legacy are you going to leave for your family if something happens to you tomorrow or 10 years from now or whenever? And we talk to business brokers and, hear stories of entrepreneurs walking away from the call just crying because the broker can do nothing for them because their business wasn't built to be saleable, to run without them. So I'm on a mission to change that.
Right on. What's funny is that, I like to say that you should run your business today as if it's for sale, even if it's not.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, and some people will ask me why. Well, why do you say that? I'm like, well, think about it. I mean, when you go to sell your house, don't you clean it and fix some little things that you just kind of let go? Doesn't it smell like cookies when it normally didn't? Because that everybody that's looking at it is going to judge you. They're walking in your house, they're going to judge you. Right? It's the same thing in business. They're walking in and nobody pays a premium for problems. Nobody's going to buy your problem. You have to look at that. Hey, I want to add a little bit of trivia here because before it escapes me, this is the OCD in me. Seth was talking about his mastery of spreadsheets. When I earned the nickname Cashflow Mike, he also earned a nickname that he's not using, so he needs to go back to it.
Right? Spreadsheet Seth.
Spreadsheet Seth.
Spreadsheet
Seth. Yeah, I kept mine. He ditched his. I don't know what happened.
When I had my staffing firm, my daughter worked for me and my son-in-law both. And I sent my daughter to an Excel class. And that was one of the best investments I ever made because I still use her Excel expertise. Hon, I need this to do this. Can you build this for me?
Hey, speaking of, I mean, Blaine and I talked about it yesterday on a podcast recording. Did you guys know, and I'm sure Seth knows, I don't know about the other, I took a table out of Excel, copied the rows and columns in the table, put it into ChatGPT, who Blaine and I have nicknamed Chad. It's our producer, our intern. It's just Chad. Ask Chad. Right?
Yep.
But I put it in there and just asked it, tell me what you can derive from this table. And just copied and pasted in there, and it produced a 1-page analysis of what was good, what was bad, what could be improved. I'm like going, oh my God, it's going to run me out of a job.
We did something similar in 97 and Up. One of our members actually said that she had done this, and I thought that's interesting. We actually pulled up in QuickBooks Online a balance sheet and a profit and loss, and I just clicked and dragged and highlighted the whole report on the web browser page, pasted that into ChatGPT and asked it to do an analysis of these financial statements, and it did a beautiful job, actually.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Fantastic.
So I want to just ask you when we're talking about this, because I know right now that's a touchy subject, based on, personally for people, and then obviously based on industries. So would you consider Chad your collaborator?
I do.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
have
sure.
one thing I just kind of experimented with along those exact lines is, I think I get the impression a lot of people when they go into Chat GPT, they create a new chat transcript for every different question they have, right? Or they'll say, as often we're guided to do, they'll say, hey, you're my SEO expert. And they have one chat transcript where the collaboration is with Chat GPT to help them improve their optimization of their content and so on. What I did was I said, let me go broader. And I created a chat transcript, which I renamed Nerd's AI Assistant. Very original, right? And what I've done now for months is over time, I just keep feeding it information about Nerd Enterprises, what I do, the different programs I have. It knows what 97 and up is. It knows about my weekly email, Nerd's Words. Sometimes I'll go in there, I'll say, I'm at a loss for ideas this week for Nerd's Words. That's all I have to say. And it knows what Nerd's Words is. It knows that's my weekly email, and it will come up with some great suggestions. I will never, ever have it write a thing for me. I will have it give me ideas. I will have it design a framework for how I might have structured something. But first of all, I love to write too much to ever turn that over to ChatGPT. Plus, there's more and more coming out about how it's very easy to tell now when something was written by AI, and that will more likely work against you than for you.
Yeah, no, Blaine caught me last week.
Mm-hmm.
I was running short on time, and I had it write a podcast description and just copied and pasted it, and he caught it and rewrote it.
I caught my graphic designer on it because I hadn't had time yet to write copy for a landing page, and he's like, I'll take care of it. And I went back and read it, and it was so like over the top. I was like, this reeks of Chat GPT. And I asked him, and the funny thing was his response was, yeah, isn't that slick? And I'm like, no, it's obvious. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I would never, like, if I had known he was going to do that, I would have acted much faster to rewrite it. I was actually a little disappointed in him, but I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. He's awesome. That was just one little
I want to challenge you guys on that conversation. I think more from the business perspective, because, okay, let's say that y'all take a position. I'd love to hear Blaine's as well. That Chad, I'm going to call him Chad because I think that's so cool. We're going to have to get a feminine name for him too, but I'll stick with Chad for today. So Chad is your collaborator, but you use your collaborator, right? As we use other partners and outside services to serve others. And then when you do something like what Mike did this week and what Seth's graphic designer did, and the person receives it and goes, so that's all you did was just give it to Chad, and that's how important I am to you. That's what I'm afraid of, because then I feel like this entire idea of collaboration just went down the drain. Because for me, speaking from myself, collaboration means we're both doing the work. We're both putting the love and the energy and the time in regards to this relationship we're building. And if you're just going to throw something in an AI and send it back to me and claim that you did something around it, I'm sorry, but my collaboration now just went down, because now it's like, we're not equal anymore. And for me, collaboration should be equal. So I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Well, I mean, I'll just reiterate what I already said, which is that I don't think there's any issue with using it as a tool to aid you in things. Like I have gone in there and said, I need to do a presentation on X, and I've had it write me an outline. Then I take that outline, I put it into a Google Doc, and I start filling in the blanks and rewriting it. And by the time I'm done, what I'm left with is very different than what ChatGPT. You wouldn't even recognize it, even if I showed you the two and told you what I did. So ChatGPT, and let's just talk about, as long as we're on the subject, since it's hot, AI in the broader perspective, it's a tool. And that's how it should be thought of, is as a tool. If you and I are collaborating and I say, hey, I've got this tool that's going to help me get my part done more efficiently, that shouldn't upset you. It should be, you should be happy about it, that I care enough to want to, do everything I can to make this the best I can possibly make it and get it done, as I often like to say, more efficiently, but also more effectively and with greater accuracy. And I bring those three terms together always to underscore the fact that oftentimes if I'm just being efficient, it also means I'm taking shortcuts and sacrificing quality along the way. So that's why I always stress it can be efficient, but it also has to be more effective, which means I'm not sacrificing any quality and, if anything, improving on it. And then more accurately, always everything I do should always be with a sense of accuracy about it, especially when we're talking about people's financials, right? That's where the whole concept of bulletproof bookkeeping that I came up with comes in. Is it's bulletproof. It's impenetrable. I can prove every number on a financial statement that I've produced.
Hey, you guys should be careful because the robots do listen to these live recordings.
I know. They're going to come for us. No, it's no question. We're heading towards the days of the Terminator, right? They are going to take over, and they're going to turn us all into machines.
Cybernetics. It is a wonderful tool, but we do have some moral questions down the road here with it. Blaine, I'm sorry. I think you were starting to say something there.
Well, I was, when you brought up, is it collaboration? I'll be honest with you. I had the opposite. I've been like, no, it's a tool, and it can be a terrific tool. I just don't view it as collaboration. I think from my maybe narrow point of view, collaboration is all built, it's people with people, and it's all built on relationships. I don't collaborate with another business. I collaborate with a person in the business. I collaborate with the person. And I mentioned I had a creative agency for over a decade, and virtually all of our sales, I can point back to relationships. It was all, and a lot of, even a lot of sales we had were collaboration with other studios, because we were really good at some of the really weird digital touchscreen, all this kind of crazy stuff that they weren't necessarily good at, and vice versa. So we're always someone to bring in a project, and a bunch of us we're going to cover this part, they're going to cover that part. And so we collaborated on all sorts of business. And we had to sell, millions of dollars to survive as a business over years. Like you never had a let up, but it was all built on relationships. And so much of it was through collaboration, but that's how I view it. It's with people, and it's on relationships. So a tool, it might be a great tool, but I don't really view it as collaboration in that sense.
Clarification.
You bring up a good point, Blaine. I think it's a question of defining what does collaboration really mean, right? Because initially I was thinking about collaboration as in I'm communicating with ChatGPT and asking it for help, and immediately I equate that to collaboration. But you're right, collaboration, in the broader sense, is really about the bigger picture of working with other human beings and getting something done.
I'm pretty much on the same page as you there, Seth. I was thinking in that same line, but I do appreciate that clarification, Blaine, because it is about the relationships.
I'm not saying I'm right. Mike knows we do this every week. I'm full of BS half the time. But that's just came to mind for me, right?
Well, what's interesting, especially given that this is the core subject of today's conversation, and we haven't done it yet. Let's define, what does collaboration actually mean? What's the definition of collaboration?
He's good at that. Ask Chad.
We should ask ChatGPT what collaboration means, right?
Let's hold back on that one.
And by the way, Mariette, I have a client who calls it chatty.
Oh, chatty. Ah.
Oh, that's actually pretty good. Yeah.
I'll take that on collaboration. And I think I'm so with you, Blaine. And I think that's why I kind of wanted to kind of challenge the question, because I get that we're always using tools, obviously, right? Yeah. And in our industry, 20, 30 years ago, we've been using tools. Some people claim that they're barely using them now, and that's a little frightening, right? Because we've always been using tools, but that's what they are. I wouldn't call my wrench my collaborator. You know what I mean? And I don't ever want to call a tool a collaborator, because it's it's not an inanimate object, right? But that's what I think the biggest issue is in our industry, and maybe worldwide, is that we still struggle with human relationships. And so now that collaborations are becoming such a big thing and an in thing and a trend, let's just keep it simple. What it means is you actually have to speak to somebody, right? Again. And that, to some
but
people,
to be fair, I am speaking to the AI. Unlike a wrench, it can actually respond to me and give me ideas, which is what I'm doing when I'm collaborating with people, just the same. I mean, if we want to sort of argue the point, all right?
I love you're arguing it, but you're still speaking to a robot. You are making the intentional decision to not speak to another human. I believe that you are choosing to speak to an AI or a robot versus speaking to a human. And if we can start calling it collaboration, which I don't, then now you're like, but I am collaborating. You're like excusing yourself by saying,
Well,
but I
not
am
if I'm speaking to the robot and then I'm also speaking to. In other words, I go to the robot. I say, "Hey, Mariette and I are working on this project, and for my part, I need to come up with an outline for X, Y, Z. ChatGPT gives me this great outline. I bring it into my Google Doc. I rewrite it a bit. Then I come to you, Mariette, and say, Mariette, here's what I've come up with. And probably one flaw in this that I'm seeing, like I said in the example of my graphic designer and what he did, it's one thing to use the tool. It's another thing to sort of hide behind it and not be transparent about the fact. Like that's, I think, the one thing that really bugged me is that he didn't tell me he was going to use ChatGPT, and then he was like proud of it. So I think it's important, if you're going to use ChatGPT or any AI tool to help you, then you got to be honest with the other people that you're collaborating with and say, hey, I used ChatGPT, I revised it a little bit, here's what I've got, let's evolve it some more. I think that's perfectly okay to do.
Yes. But that only evolved because you brought in a human. You brought in a human into the conversation. So that's where the collaboration happened.
I find it a little weird that I don't know if you have to like explain that you use what list of tools, because honestly, like I look at it as just a tool. Like it's not much. It's a more sophisticated search, but I'm not telling people, I'm like, well, I did a search on Google, and here's what I found. Right? Yeah. Like it's just a tool. So in other words, I'm like, I'm vetting it, whether I do a lot of work or a little work, because some of it, like Mike, we were on our show yesterday and I asked it to write some emotional thing. And it's like, the first sentence was pretty good. And then by about the fifth, you're like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah.
And,
you can
tell its tone.
So
I did something the other day,
right?
where I wanted ChatGPT to write something for me. And as part of my prompt, I said, the tone should be like even and down to earth. You can, in fact, we're told we should tell it what the tone should be. And it will follow those instructions. I did get something that was pretty sort of even keeled and not over the top and cheesy was what I was making sure to avoid.
Tone is always but tone is always my problem with Chad, because it used to be snarky. It's not a snark anymore. Remember that? It would be snarky and kind of almost make fun of you a little bit, at least me. But now it talks with such authority that it's almost that even when it's lying, even when it tells you the exact wrong answer, it will do it with authority, and I'm afraid people will believe it.
That's a big concern. If you read a lot, that's what everybody's concerned about, is that it writes, it's a very good writer. And it writes with a tone of such authority that even when it's dead wrong, it will convince people that it's telling you the truth, which is why I think hopefully by now already it's sort of common knowledge. I mean, even Sam Altman himself will tell you this. He has been quoted as having said it, that you can't rely on it, that you have to check it. You have to fact check it. You can't assume that what it's telling you is accurate. And over time, it's gotten worse. It's gotten dumber over time. Why? Because you have millions and millions of people feeding it garbage every day.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is actually by design, almost not intentionally, but by design, by its own design, it's getting dumber with time right now. And they're going to work on that for sure.
Well, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, but it's also like Mike and I talked a little bit yesterday, for some of the stuff, if it's really good quality, like you're like your outlines, and this is what I want to cover. And this is, if it's really dialed in and it's just stringing the grammar together, you can do a pretty good job of that. But boy, you got to be so careful of what you're putting in to make sure that you're putting in a little box of just tidy it up, make a little bit of write it out and save me a few minutes, and then but you still have to go through every line and make sure that it's adjust.
It's important to note that it's meant to be iterative. Don't think you're going to write one prompt and get the end result. You're going to have to work with it. You're going to have to collaborate with it to get it to be better. And see what I did there?
I know, Mike, you had it right.
I'm going to argue with you right now, because all we're talking about is this relationship that we're building with ChatGPT. And here's my fear, everyone. Like, this
Haven't you seen the movie where the guy falls in love with his artificial assistant?
But that's the problem. Like, I'm with Regina. We're like on a mission to bring people back together, not to pull them apart. And so that's really my fear. I get it's a tool. I get we're smart enough to know that we can have different iterations and all of that. But I feel like it's another reason for humans to not connect with humans. That is the biggest issue I have with it.
No, you know what my reason is for not connecting with humans? My dogs. 100%.
They're the best judge of character, right? If a dog doesn't like somebody.
Mariette, to your point, it is a risk And there are lots of risks with it, and more than we can even foresee at this moment. I think, I can't see broad enough to see all of the risks for sure, but I think it's an amazing tool, and I use it every day to help me with things. Mike, we'll hear from you, and then we're going to go into our wrap-up round. Okay.
I just wanted to ask this, right? We're calling it a tool. Why is it that we don't have to cite it as a source?
I think we should.
Yeah,
I
right.
I wouldn't. Of course, I wouldn't tell somebody if I used a wrench to complete that kind of job. But I think for this kind of knowledge work, when we use a tool like ChatGPT, at least when we are collaborating with others, I think it is important to fully disclose, hey, I use ChatGPT to help me with this, especially because if you're following the news on some of this, you're seeing more and more people are starting to sue OpenAI because they're saying that ChatGPT, the way they fed it, has taken information from the web that's copyrighted. And as a result, you may be using copyrighted content in your results when you're using ChatGPT. Sarah Silverman is famously suing them now. New York Times is famously suing them now. There's a lot of these kind of cases coming out, and that's only going to get worse until Sam Altman and company can prove that they have not violated anybody's sort of rights with respect to copyright.
So I think it comes back to what kind of content are you using it for? Are you using it to enhance your ability to write emails in a campaign? Are you using it, to enhance your writing of a book? Would be two completely different scenarios that I would question. Did you use it on? Yeah. Folks, we're out of time. This you haven't heard a conversation like this on this show, folks. So I hope you really enjoyed this. This was fun. It was great, challenging our thought processes, but showing the many different ways that we can collaborate and change the world. One person, one business at a time. There's so many opportunities for us to be a positive influence in the world through collaboration and relationships.
This is my collaboration tool right here.
I know exactly what that is. We had one when I was a kid. So, Mike, let's do a wrap-up round, and I'd like you to lead that if you would. Have everybody share their final thoughts about collaboration and their contact information.
All right, great. Oh, I'm going to lead it off with a sentence, though. The sentence would be this. If you're listening to this and you live or recorded and you like it, I will take the credit. If you don't like it, if you thought this was a waste of your time, I'm going to blame my guest. So please respond to us in comments or chat. If you didn't like what you hear, blame it on Seth, Mariette, and Blaine.
No, just blame it on me. Just go right to. It's my fault if it went all wrong.
Big shoulders, huh?
So here's what I think I learned, and this is how we should wrap it up. I think here's what I think I learned today, and this is what Blaine and I do on our podcast, right? That collaboration really is more geared towards human to human interaction, because I think there's a sharing of ideas. There's an emotional attachment to that idea. There's some persuasiveness that I just don't think you can get from a tool. So who's got another thought, Mariette?
Yeah, this whole time when we were talking, this keeps on coming up. A collaboration is about your tribe. It's about other humans and you being brave enough to love them and bring them into your life. And from there, other magic is going to appear. That's what I believe collaboration is.
Yeah. Hey, Blaine, what do you think?
Well, I agree that it's people. It's people talking with people. It's all built on relationships. It's amazing that we get to talk here on Zoom. So Zoom's done something great there, but it's also taken away some of the in-person, which is really different. So it's great to be in person. But I also found it interesting that we got sort of derailed on a tool. And it's new and it's going to be so much more pervasive. But I think we'll look back in a few years also, and it's going to be, it's like the internet. Like, it's a tool. And it'll be, I think it'll settle in and it'll be treated as a tool, I think, more and more. So maybe I'm wrong. There is a guy that fell in love with AI. And I'm going to tell you guys, if you want to come and talk with us, come and visit us at dryrun.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Blaine Bertsch, LinkedIn. You grab me there as well. Would love to chat with you.
All right. Yeah. Mariette, you want to follow up with a little plug?
Oh, yeah, sure. MasterYourBooks.com. I keep it simple. Check all of my stuff there. And more importantly, check the people and humans I collaborate with there as well.
Awesome.
And finally, the last word, the smartest guy in the room, Seth David, the nerd.
Big shoulders.
The smartest guy in the room who uses a magic 8-ball to make every decision ever. You know, what I take away from this, first of all, is that it's important to remember something. It's what's on the outside that counts, because the insides are gross. I kid. This very live stream, by the way, we should give proper credit. It's StreamYard today. It's not Zoom. I think the StreamYard gods would be very upset with us for calling it Zoom, right?
You're right. Yeah.
But joking aside, I think what we're doing right here is a perfect example of collaboration. I think it does entail human to human connection, working with others, exchanging ideas, and then coming up with something that's based on the term synergy, right? Everybody knows what synergy means. It means the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. That, to me, should be the ultimate goal of collaboration. You think of a pyramid, we are all at the base of that pyramid, working towards that single point at the top, where, again, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. We can do together much more than any of us individually, or even individually but collectively, could do on our own.
Yeah. All right. Before I turn it back to Regina, I want to thank her. Thanks for this opportunity. I know we're new friends. We just kind of got together here, but this was a great experience for us, at least for me. So I want to thank you for hosting and allow us to be part of it.
I enjoyed every moment of it, and can't wait to see how we can collaborate. Thank you. And thank you, folks, for joining us today. We had a lively discussion here on Collaboration Conversations, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.